One Project has been around for almost 3 years. Since One Project started, they've done a ton of research, everything from think tanks to writing a book, creating media assets, to doing tons and tons of research internally to identify a path forward as it relates to the build out of an alternative economic system. Kenya Immersion trip really represented a moment and an inflection point within the organization where we are moving from a place of mind into a place of body. And instead of thinking about alternative economic systems in the form of books or media pages or online, we felt it was really crucial that One Project had an embodied experience, a physical, lived experience that relates to alternative economic system development.
We are here in Zombe Ward. One Project is really excited to be here with Grassroots Economics. Our intentions as One Project for this time is really twofold. First, we're really excited to deepen our relationship with the Grassroots Economics team, go deeper in terms of understanding their work, the CICs, and going a lot deeper to help us understand the best way forward for our partnership with Grassroots Economics. Secondly, broadly, we're really interested in understanding community economic systems and learning from the Kasarani community about what does community economics mean to them? What is their understanding and the definitions and the layers that when we continue to unearth and have dialogue around what is a community economic system, what comes about? We're really excited and feel really honored to be here. We are deploying our friend Esther Chico, who is using a theater for development model. Through this, we're moving folks not just from a mental process, but moving it into their bodies and using theater as a mechanism and as a tool to help unearth and go deeper as to what is an economic system.
Well, my name is Esther Gisheru. I'm currently in Kitui and pursuing a project with One Project in collaboration with Grassroots. So we're using theatre for development to explore alternatives and to explore what the community understands by alternatives, especially in the economic spectrum, and the key themes around economy. We're trying to understand better what is the understanding of these words. What is it that they understand about this in their own language, without us trying to impact what we know about it, sort of getting the organic explanations from them, which has been an experience.
When Essie has really been leading these dialogues around what is economics, what is an economy. First, we don't want to impose our perceptions of the layers. And that, I think, allows for a lot of natural, organic, place-based learning. That said, the lens that One Project has really cuts across power and resistance, ecology and sustainability, governance, social cohesion and culture. It cuts across sovereignty, equity, effectiveness. An approach that I've seen here deployed is sometimes in order to help people understand something like effectiveness, we need to help understand ineffectiveness. Sometimes that's an easier bridge to understanding what is effective, is to understand what is not effective, what is not equitable. For example, we recently had a session where we entered the Kitui town, downtown, into the market area. And I noticed that some of the field officers collecting pictures for this photo voice session were capturing pollution and the degradation of the environment with the lens of ecology. And for them, a way to understand ecology was to understand the other side of that, which is when the environment is not being protected. So I'm excited to see how within the things we're interested around equity and equality and effectiveness and ecology, you also have to understand the mirror to that, the shadow of that, and how that also plays into an economic system and the way they understand the economic system.
It's been really transformative so far. We've met with Will from Grassroots Economics. I've learned a lot more about community inclusion currencies, some of the work that he's doing. So it's been really wonderful to visit these communities and just be welcomed so warmly. I think each community has welcomed us, just singing and dancing and smiling. Just a lot of excitement all around.
Generally speaking, I would say it's an experience of bringing two worlds together. You could understand that in terms of culture. We're bringing people from vastly different cultures together, especially America, California, Silicon Valley, the tech space. It's a certain experience. And then coming to the coast of Kenya with grassroots economics that's really deeply anchored in the grassroots of the Kenyan cultural landscape. And so creating a space between those two worlds has been quite an experience.
I think the first thing I learned in going to the villages was, of course, you walk and there is great need everywhere. There's not a lot of water. There's just a great need for food and water and basic everyday things. And then through grassroots economics, they were holding a basket, really what the village contains. So maybe you have a few eggplants and I have some firewood and how we can exchange. So this sense of we have something together, that's really the first thing that I learned. The second thing that I really learned was how much the digital, the use of the phones, enabled people to really exchange in a new way. So it's very different when you're with somebody and they're giving you money on their phone, and here this is a new system and people are learning, even some of the elders, like, show me, because they want to participate. And so seeing the digital and how it enables people to be something part of the larger world in a simple way was also really important. And then the third thing is, of course, that trust and the community remains, right? It's not like it gets replaced. We talk about the social and the digital, and the trust needed to say, I'm going to send you something on my phone. Yes, we can both see it, and how the community comes together and actually begins to visualize, what else could we do? What else do we need? Here we heard people talking about, they've been saving together on the digital and local currencies. They started local currency, then they went digital, and they have a book where they've written down each week what they're giving so they can give emergency loans. And this sense of we are together and we can save is enhanced by the digital, but it's really found in the trust and community. So for one project, I think this brings up some questions about who we work with. Who is our core audience? Are we starting with people that are really, literally have nothing and we're helping them to build digital infrastructure? Are we starting with people who have something and is the assumption that, oh, everyone will adopt? And I think the challenge will be picking who we work with and what movements and really going deep. Because even here, when we begin to look at like 100 different villages adopting, in some places, like where we are today, it's very deep. The women are saving, they have a whole system, it's quite secure, even when they make loans to each other in emergencies, no one defaults, like it's very powerful. And in other places, it's not quite there yet. So we wanna make sure that whatever we do has a depth to it as well as a breadth.
One huge question is, what is the right beachhead for us? Like who are the initial adopters of this system that would be most appropriate? I mean, there's a lot. It's very powerful to see. It's so grassroots to see communities that have been so left out of the current economic system and to be really focusing on them. And then a huge question that's just come up architecturally, especially in conversations with Will, is how much the community should be that unit. Will's vision, or the GE vision, is that there's all these different currencies. Like every single community defines its own currency. I mean, he even goes smaller than that. He lets like individual businesses to define their own currencies. And then he's got a idea for how the community currencies connect together through liquidity pools and this kind of interesting blockchain explanation. Which like I could see working, but yeah, Raph and I keep coming back to like, is that necessary? Is that valuable? Like, does every community need their own individual currency? Or could you really have just like one global community currency?
We knew early on that reflection and deliberation as a team as well as independently is going to be a really important part of this trip. In that deliberation, we were wrestling with how much can we learn from an organization that maybe isn't doing it the way we want, but has elements of an alternative economic system that we could still learn a lot from.
In Kitui, we had the advantage of having done a little more prep work, and so the stage was set for a bit of a deeper probing conversation. And so through that discussion, they kept coming back to the need for water. We had had a previous discussion within one project about whether or not we would provide wells, and arguments were made for and against the provision of wells. There is one line of thinking that says, well, if water is the basic need that people require and want, then it's up to us to help them meet that before we start talking about other things. There's another line of thinking which says there's a danger that we fall into humanitarian mode and we're just trying to solve all types of problems and we never get to the root causes or the systemic solutions, which is our mission. The middle ground argument was, not only does meeting people where they're at in terms of helping them meet their basic needs start a relationship that can grow, so it wasn't long before we were able to connect their saying that they need water as their basic need to seeing how the provision of water could help them increase production that could require a governance mechanism that could also help to expand the volume of currency and the basis for minting that currency. So it was quite interesting to see in real time how the productive base and the infrastructure necessary to capitalize upon it was being expressed as a need by this community without us even trying to script that.
The way that we phrased questions, there's almost an expectation of a certain type of response. So for example, at Kaya, it was like, what's one lesson that you can give us to go back with? And the chairman of the community recited a very long history of the community. We left feeling like didn't really answer the question, but he actually did in his own way. And similarly, I think we asked head on, like, what are some of the opportunities that you see CICs providing, and kept coming back with like, we need a water system, or we need an irrigation system. And for me, it almost reinforced this need for certain conditions in order for CICs to be really effective. So just having these questions be answered in different ways than we expected, for me was a really clear takeaway that you might be expecting or you might be looking for information communicated a certain way, but if you sit with it, you can often try and distill the deeper meaning behind the question, or behind the answer, that is.
To give us a window into the life in the slums. Some of the things that jump out are, one, just how materially disadvantaged these areas are. 100 families can share one toilet in Makuru. That's mind-boggling. How do 100 families share one toilet? And they also have to pay each time they use that toilet. So this shows you the extent of dispossession and disenfranchisement that people are experiencing. And at the same time, they're able to create living environments in which they can not only look healthy and be clean, but also develop themselves intellectually to the point that they were interacting with us on equal terms, in terms of language, in terms of thought, in terms of English. And what that revealed is, wow, if these people are able to maintain their physical health, maintain their hygiene and their presentation, maintain their sharpness and keenness of mind in this environment, what more could they achieve in an environment that actually was designed to tap into and help them actualize their full potential? The experience with the refugees definitely made it clear that planned living environments are not only possible, but actually are being administered all across the world with respect to refugees. They're being administered by the United Nations, and they're being administered in a way that provides certain benefits that are undeniable, but also real shortcomings. And so the question then became, okay, why? What's the problem? And what came out is that there are many dimensions to the problem, some of which are systemic, which are at a systems level, the way in which money and decision-making flow from the top down, and as it enters into the community, is fragmented and broken into all these little pieces as different organizations and entities grab their piece of the pie and administer it outside of any kind of real systems level construct. So there's a fragmentation that takes place, and the people in the camp experience that fragmentation. And they experience that fragmentation also as a problem of consciousness, the consciousness of the actual administrators, because they reflect that fragmentation by pursuing very narrow interests from their positions of responsibility, which brings in nepotism, which brings in corruption. When asked how to improve upon it, and when challenged to do so by envisioning themselves as the United Nations, as the governing council, as the ones who get to make all the decisions, what we also found is that it's much easier to be critical of something than to actually assume the responsibility for it. And what this led us to also note is that to enter into co-imagining around alternative systems and to assume a place of empowerment and responsibility is going to require a lot of facilitation. How do we actually help to shift their way of thinking and their perception and their consciousness so that they can operate from that place of agency. That emerged as a challenge that we shouldn't underestimate and we have to plan for as we move into structured co-imagining with communities.
Coming out of the second week, some of the feedback we had received was like, let's go deeper with young people. So far, the immersion had been more older people centered versus youth centered. We felt there would be a really great opportunity to go deeper, not with just Kakuma youth, but with Nairobi youth. The reason we saw the value in that is a couple-fold. One, the Kakuma refugee youth experience is going to be starkly different than the metropolitan Nairobian experience. Their vision of a more prosperous economic future is more connected to resettlement, repatriation, or return. Versus the Nairobian, their aspirations of a more effective economic system likely looks very different. Secondly, young people are highly technologically literate compared to their older counterparts. The role of this session with the youth was to, yes, unearth young people understanding of their economic system, but also enter a phase of co-imagining with the youth. So we were testing the role of value alignment, segueing into asset alignment and asset mapping. So identifying soft assets like your ability to write, your ability to do research, your ability to take wonderful images, a wealth of financial literacy, and pair that with the hardware assets and inviting folks to opt in to what their hardware is and what their software is. And through the value alignment, the hardware and software mapping, we were able to achieve a place where they were able to unanimously agree around a shared vision, a name, and put together a mock-up of a plan to continue building out this collective that they were identifying.
So kwa mfano kwa sasa hii watu wameleta kitu kuuza kwa
just because GE isn't fully actualizing their vision and improving the lives of people the way they can doesn't mean that they haven't identified and built a component of an alternative economic system that functions well and has things that we could learn about. And I felt like in that first deliberation, like we were looking for the perfect organization, or some people felt that way, and instead they were presented a real organization.
Immersion trips are some of the most important work we can be doing now, because we want to co-create and partner with people on the ground. And there's, of course, a big difference between what Will dreamed and what was built on the ground because of resource. Seeing that, and in seeing in places where the dream was beyond what people thought, is going to be very important. There are not so many places around the world where the transition is really taking hold or movements are taking hold that we couldn't spend time really deeply listening and learning from those communities. And I think that really would help us to grow our theory of change, yes, but more importantly, our theory of practice. So there's a lot of failure in building community scale on the ground, and finding our comfort with understanding what it looks like for people to actually build who've done that in the current system is going to be very helpful to us aligning our vision into something that becomes possible.